Hello, I'm thrilled to be chatting with my friend John Cecilian, the co-founder and CEO of Cecilian Partners. In this episode, we talked about the macro real estate industry, changes over the past 10 years, innovation and technology adoption, near and dear to my heart, and how capturing all forms of data really enhances the customer buying experience. Can't wait for y'all to hear this one. Hey, John, welcome to the Undeniable Podcast. We're glad you're with us.
Thank you for having me, Devin. It's excited to talk shop today.
You and I have a long history. We probably will get into that, our backgrounds, our mutual interest in real estate technology. Let's begin with your background. Tell me more about how you got to the place you are today with Cecilian Partners, the company, and what was the story that led up to this?
You bet. So I spent 18 years in and around retail. Cut my teeth at Abercrombie & Fitch in the early 2000s when the brand was really relevant and growing and thriving. Had a chance to go from sort of a store manager position to a multi-unit position, which was sort of this whole evolution for Abercrombie in the early 2000s, where it had kind of an up and out mentality where you could go from sort of that position of SM all the way up to being a district manager, regional manager. And that for me was remarkable because it taught me so much about multi-unit manager and the sense of P&L management, team management, customer management, embracing new systems and technologies to get there, and had the opportunity of kind of riding that evolution of retail into a variety of different brands. And from the launch of the iPhone in 2007, the launch of e-commerce shopping in really 2011 with sort of omni-channel shopping, it was this whole evolution that happened in and around all retail brands, both big and small. And a lot of that learning and a lot of that experience is what brought me into residential real estate and around both community development and production home building.
Now, I know that some of your family has been very instrumental in the community development world. It kind of exposed you to, wow, there's opportunities in real estate.
Devin, that's a great point. Yes. So my mother, Kathleen, was a strategic marketing consultant, brand expert for 30 years, really a copywriter by trade, went from really understanding all things consumer packaged goods and working for some of the biggest marketing firms and ad agencies in the world to bringing that know-how to this industry as well. And no doubt, I had a sort of proverbial seat at the table where I had the chance to learn all things about the challenges that exist in and around this category. And I always thought to myself, geez, we're solving that today in retail. Why is it that the process of, buying a new home couldn't be more modernized?
Yeah, man, I met your mom professionally in, I want to get this year right, 2006 at a community in Hilton Head. And she was an advisor to a developer there. It was John Reed, and the community was called Hampton Lakes. And I was blown away by her. I mean, she took a very strategic, almost scientific approach to real estate marketing sales. And at that point, we had started the Bright Door company, and I just hadn't seen anybody think the way Kathy thought. And there's not enough people in the industry like her. I mean, it sounds like I'm going to offend somebody, but she was in the very rarefied air to think about something that everybody just took for granted. You do a billboard, you do a newspaper ad, you have some salespeople in a model home like that. And she always saw it more science than art, or balance, maybe a balance between science and art. Did that influence you in what you're doing today?
It did. I mean, just so you know, I think that same level of thoughtfulness carried over into being a mom. I'm the oldest of four. In many ways, she brought that level of energy and enthusiasm about how to attack problems, at school, with friends, at life, and kind of looking at the world differently. And so, sure, I think that had a major impact on just my upbringing, as well as I think my professional prowess as well, no doubt.
Yeah. So at some point you said, hey, this real estate industry, and you and I had this conversation 4 years ago, I bet,
we
or
did,
longer.
Yeah.
Maybe it's been 6 years. Yeah. Where we had a semi, professional conversation around the industry, and we shared this belief that it was then 5-6 years ago, it was broken. So what led you to want to start a solution in this space? What did you mean by the industry was broken back then, And ultimately, we're going to talk about where to.
I would tell you, there's this real big push nowadays, both in universities, whether it's undergraduate or graduate, in and around entrepreneurship, in this concept that everyone should be exposed to entrepreneurship. And I have very strong opinions about, I don't know if that's true, meaning I've always flirted with the idea of wanting to go out on my own and focus on something that I'm really passionate about to sort of bring my level of domain expertise to another industry. And frankly, this wasn't by accident. It was sort of a combination of accident and choice, meaning I went through a series of layoffs because it's no secret that the retail industry has gone through a lot, especially brick and mortar retail and how those teams are comprised and how field teams are comprised. And within that, in those series of layoffs, in my final layoff, Labor Day weekend 2018, I will always sort of be grateful for that, because what that did is it forced me, with the push from my wife, Jennifer, to go out and finally do what I want to do in and around residential real estate, new home construction. And to your point, Devin, about recognizing, gee whiz, like when you say something's broken, that's sort of a bold statement. And here's what I mean. The reason why I had the courage to go out on my own and do this wasn't just because I had wonderful family support, both from my wife and parents and brothers and others. It's really foundationally because I spent time secret shopping a variety of home builders in and around New Jersey and Pennsylvania. We're based here out of Greater Philadelphia, New Hope, Pennsylvania. And a really well-known national public builder, I had the privilege of secret shopping 12 different places. I wrote this very comprehensive report on some of the things that I found to be low-hanging fruit on the customer experience, things that I knew in retail were table stakes, just weren't being done in the process of shopping for a $500,000 home or more. I wrote up this report. I sent it to their corporate office. I shared it with some other advisors around me, and it earned me a meeting to go to their corporate office and share with them these findings. And it was so affirming, recognizing that this home builder knew without question that they had an opportunity to centralize their online sales team with their Welcome Center and Model Home team. They had the opportunity of doing a better catch-all than the 5x7 note cards that you fill out upon entry, and all these other pieces.
Which, by the way, still exist.
Yes, no doubt. Yeah. It seems like it's, old habits die hard. And exactly. For some odd reason, those behaviors have not really come full circle, in my opinion, meaning recognizing there's a better way to collect customer data and create a better customer experience from the online journey into the physical journey.
Does it bother you to say things are broken today?
No, I think it's okay. I think recognizing that things are broken are good. I think that, it is a point of view. I don't want broken to be heard as negative. I would prefer that broken being heard as opportunistic, and that there is so much remarkable chance for us to get when I say us, I mean the industry. And when I say the industry, I mean residential real estate across all things production, home building, and land development, even HOA management to a degree, to really start to get our data house in order, to start to embrace new ways to run our business that other industries have done for 25 years now and have adopted those new technologies and behaviors.
Yeah. And to give our listeners a little context, both you and I, have this background in real estate software, and ultimately, I said this in the introduction, your company acquired my old company after I left
Yes.
Bright Door. So we can unpack that or talk about it if you want. But
sure.
It means that we both have firsthand knowledge of the same thing. So when I say broken, it comes from the earliest years of trying to start that company, Bright Door, that now is the XO, and pitching venture capitalists. And their goal was always, how big is this audience? And there's millions of people that buy homes every year. And what is the competitive weakness or advantage? And the thing I would always come back to, I use the word laggard, and this was in 2006, 7, 8, I kept talking about the industry was a laggard industry. And at that time, this is just a decade after the birth of the internet. And the analog was the travel industry, because I remember in the 90s, I was a contractor at Northern Telecom, Nortel Networks, and I would fly a lot to different Nortel offices, and I would always have to get a paper ticket to board an airplane. And
Sure.
And they had a in-house travel agency operated by American Express inside the corporate office, and then at some point in the 2000s, all the travel people said, "Why don't we have digital tickets? Why don't we have electronic tickets? Why can't you print them?" And by the way, why can't websites that ultimately became Travelocity and Expedia Why can't normal people buy airline tickets and not have to go through a travel agent? Well, that was a watershed moment in digitizing old industries. Ironically, that software system called Sabre that did all that in the 90s still operates today. I asked a gate agent at American a week ago. I said, have you ever heard of Sabre? She goes, look, this is it. It's still running, which is mind-blowing. But the real estate industry, because of some legacy, heritage, or mindset, really hasn't wanted to change. Some of that is the general brokerage world, agents, brokers, realtors. Some of it is just the way home builders think that is good enough. Like, we've always done it this way. But I promise you, and you already know this, it's not going to, that old mindset isn't going to have the luxury of lasting much longer. I mean, the world is moving at an exponential pace and embracing new technologies, but also your mantra is new experiences, optimize, streamline experiences for the buyer. That's not negotiable anymore. It has to happen.
Agreed, and I couldn't have said that better, Devin. I mean, I think the big thing that we see every single day is exactly how you said it. It really is more about legacy thinking. It really is more this dynamic where technology for technology's sake is not the answer. Meaning, there really is a behavioral throughput that has to happen by these executives, where these men and women have to take a position that they want to hire differently, train differently, teach differently, right? Here's another example to your earlier case. 2006, you talked about sort of that dynamic of kind of telecom and air travel and why these other industries were able to adopt before real estate. Now, I want to kind of imagine this journey where real estate is static and now those industries have passed real estate, right? Well, guess what? 2018, McKinsey and Harvard did a study, and that study was, who are the greatest tech laggards cross industry? Real estate and agriculture, except it's the other way around. Agriculture and real estate. Again, this stuff happening passed through it, right? Again, real estate being static. I think the foundational change in why there's been an upswing in Proptech momentum. So Proptech's sort of this cute catch-all referencing all things real estate technology or commercial real estate technology, where not just in the built environment, but really in and around how commercial brokerages turned that on their head and did things in a different way around how to engage with the aspiring home buyer. Proptech to me is more of a general catch-all, right? Not the Compass, not the Redfin, not the Zillow. It's a different way to think about on the areas that you want to mitigate risk for your customer, areas that are opportunistic. What are different areas of real estate that you can make a difference? And I think that's where I look at Proptech in and around the innovation space. Tens of billions of dollars has been put into Proptech organizations over the last 12 years. It is the fastest growing tech grouping or tech fiefdom, greater than ad tech, advertising tech, greater than fintech on the financial side. It is a meaningful evolution and change that is really happening, in my opinion, that we have seen. And I think the reason why you see that is to your other point around the total addressable market, that you can't deny there are hundreds of thousands of home builders across the country, both regional and national and custom, if you will, hundreds of thousands that all could use help at different levels of innovation. There are 350,000 HOAs across America today, all of whom could use some help. There's 15,000 land developers, all of whom could use some help. And so that is our core competency at Cecilian, is being able to focus on those three areas of stakeholders in the residential real estate space and trying to help these men and women become smarter about their business and to start to think back to 2006, 2018, and present day. And I think that's where we start when we try to educate our clients.
But I remember even years ago, the technology going into farm implements like John Deere. John Deere isn't a tractor company anymore. John Deere is a data company. I mean, and those machines are all powered by GPS down to inches. So it might be ironic that the agricultural industry surpasses the real estate industry in being more technically sophisticated because of the reason that I think we're circling around here, which is the impetus to change. There hasn't been enough customer buyer pressure for the real estate industry to have to change. Maybe in food production, the pressure is higher, or prices or something. Certainly every other industry has evolved in dramatic ways. I mean, we're having a conversation using broadband internet and some software and some cameras and some microphones, and so we don't have to get on planes to meet each other in an office, and it's just getting better and better, like we're in the same room.
I mean, Devin, you're a futurist at heart, and you're a futurist in real life, and so that is you. So you're always going to be many steps ahead. I imagine in 2006 you were talking about things you see today every day, and in 2036 you're going to see things that you talked about today now at present.
Yeah, my AI will talk about things in 2036.
There you go. Yeah. So what I'm getting at is I do think that in technology adoption and in innovation specifically, it really needs to be a crawl, walk, run approach. Many of our customers will talk about things like adopting an AI strategy when they don't really understand how to query an LLM and what that even means and why they need to use it. Many of our clients will talk about AR, VR and why that seems desirable, but doesn't really understand the nuances of bringing that in, implementing that, and making it work for good. And there's a series of other examples I can get at. And here's the problem. The problem that I've seen across 200 different communities in the U.S. today that are in our customer portfolio. Okay. And I'll speak as candidly as I can. It's data. And it's data in a way that all data is not good data. And that we are sitting on mounds and mounds of data that in many ways are not being looked at the right way. They're not being kept in a way that allow us to revisit them to make better and more informed decisions. We are not hiring the right people to help us bring in those data sets, study those data sets, and use them. If I were to talk to a C-suite home builder, and I used acronyms like ERP, what are your API solutions? They would look at me like I had two heads. So one of the things that I try to do is make sure that I'm clear in what I'm talking about. If I'm talking about an ERP solution, I'm talking about enterprise resource planning. What does that mean? Right? At the end of the day, you have to really articulate that it's a catch-all platform that allows you to have a single source of truth of how you conduct business. And there's all of these third-party pieces that bring data into this single source of truth, and how that data is being captured and how that data is being managed is key. And I tell our customers all the time, you're creating all of these technology and data silos across your organization. And this is where it's just like retail, Devin. It's apples for apples like retail. Retail 2011, you had three areas of, before social media became a shopping environment, right? You had your mobile device, you had your e-commerce cart, and you had a point of sale solution in the brick and mortar environment. So you had three areas to capture the customer, sell your products, and engage. And if you're the chief marketing officer of a large retail brand, and you're making your next year budgets predicated on how many people you think you have in your database, and that database is not talking to itself across mobile, e-commerce, and the brick and mortar, now you have duplicate data. And now you think that your database of 2 million, it might really be 750,000. And if that's the case, well, geez, how do we unify that? The evolution from 11 to 18 was about unifying e-commerce carts, making sure that the same commerce cart that was on your mobile device was done at the World Wide Web URL site, that was done and connected to the Epicor point of sale, point and click solution in the brick and mortar. What that did was eliminate disparate data, dedupe the challenges, and knowing that, okay, when I market to John Smith, that person is also John C. Smith and John Smith Jr., if that makes sense, right? It's this dynamic that we too often do that. The reason why it's a perfect analog to production home building and how we engage the customer today is if you were to go right now to any of the big publics and reserve a reservation to tour a new home, and you were to go through the online sales team, you put in all of your information. You've identified the elevation and floor plan you want, the price you want to spend, all of it. Great. We're going to send you to this beautiful community. You're going to go tour it. Great. You arrive. What is the first thing that happens when you arrive? You're filling out a 5x7 note card again. So now you've done all the work as the customer, doing everything on the online sales experience. You're in the system. Now you show up online to the model home, and now you're in the system twice. That doesn't make sense. And I assure you that behavior is still happening today because the larger initiative on the online experience at the corporate level is not being disseminated to all of the regional factions that allow the behavior to change around how we collect customer data, how we engage with the customer, right? That is a top-down approach versus sort of this dislocated approach.
You're really good at explaining things because you just said World Wide Web, and most people don't even know that www means World Wide Web. You're like, what? That's what www means. And secondly, I want you to tell me. I want to get up my third question before I forget. But secondly, let's circle back to who do you think is the best retailer in the world today? I remember when Blockbuster thought they were going bankrupt because of Amazon. So there's something to learn from the retail world. The third thing is, it's your point, which is so valid, man. It's not only about hiring the right people, it's about training them, because I have empathy for a lot of sales persons, and they're professional. Some are extremely professional, the best salespeople I know, that are, they're reasonably stuck in the model home. They're bored for 2 or 3 hours a day. Then 6 families walk in, and they didn't grow up using a keyboard. And here's the difference. I went to a regular doctor physical checkup a month ago. And there was a construction outage that cut the fiber line to this big medical complex. And they were freaking out. They couldn't pull up my records. And they didn't even know how to ask me questions in like a simple medical interview without their monitor. The medical industry, at least in franchise healthcare, is so converted to these online health records, medical health records,
Sure.
that they can't even, they didn't know where, they didn't have pen and paper. It was hilarious. And then they wrote down notes, and they said, when the power comes back on and we get reconnected, we'll enter this in the data. And then all the electronic health records, email, all that stuff happened. But I was marveling at the fact, like, freak, this is an antiquated industry as well, a laggard industry, healthcare, but something forced healthcare to digitize everything to the point that they're crippled without, internet connectivity. But again, some industries can hold out. I mean, it's almost like they're holding out for something, and it could be the staffing issue and the training issue and other things that you've witnessed that you probably even have forgotten. So I'm echoing back some questions for you. Who's your favorite retailer?
Gosh, that's a hard question today for me. I think there's so many that do it differently. I think at the department store level, I find Nordstrom to still be best in class because they continue to anchor on great service from, a e-commerce environment to a brick and mortar environment. So in the department store world, I think they're wonderful. I think Lululemon still holds a pretty hard position for me. I think, again, not only from like a retail lens perspective, how they merchandise their product and storytell and engage with the buyer, but they understand how to create uniformity around like, okay, I'm in the area, so I can go to the local store to pick up my product if I want, right? So it creates a sense of ease or kind of this kind of frictionless experience for the buyer that make it simple, right? And I think so. Those are two kind of analogs, if you will, that I think make a lot of sense.
You didn't mention Apple.
I think Apple is Apple. I mean, I think Apple's always going to be amazing. I don't look at Apple as a retailer. I think that people would think that was funny. I look at Apple as the greatest product company in the world. And I think that they understand how to make products for consumers in a way that others don't understand. And I think that an Apple here's why. An Apple store could have a pop-up tent in the middle of a major city or even a secondary market, and you'd have the best experience on the planet. It's almost an unfair competition to really go there because they understand.
Yeah. And so could we have a future where the real estate purchase experience was like an Apple experience? Is that even possible?
I don't know. I think people want that. So there's this funny thing that I'm going to talk about with you that I think you're going to laugh at me. So if I had $1 for every time a client said, we want to be the Tesla of home building, I sort of chuckle because I don't think they foundationally understand what that means. Here's why. Tesla was remarkable in the very beginning in and around how they sold their product because they got away from the paradox of choice. Right? It was very streamlined. I believe you could choose 6 colors. You could choose maybe 2 different models, if you will, in the interior, maybe 3. And what you got was what you got on the specific model you looked at. Maybe that changed a little bit with the Model 3. But within that narrative for the consumer, you were very clear of understanding that you had limited choice of what you could build. Also, I believe the statistic still holds true. I think greater than 70% of a Tesla car buyer has been in a store or has at least test driven the vehicle prior. So that then begs the question, well, geez, if you're going to be the Tesla of home buying, you still have to affirm that would-be home buyer has to be in your 4 walls, has to be able to explore what the elevation and floor plan feel like, where the lot orientation is in the subdivision or community. Like those things still matter. Because I do believe that buying a home is still the singular most important purchase for anyone in any stage of life. That's the other part that I think is often forgotten about. It's not about it being a singular purchase in the sense that you do it once, you never do it. Nowadays, and a lot of the stats point to the average person owns a home or buys a home 7 times in their lifetime. And if you think about what that means in the sense of buying a home, what I'm getting at is at the end of the day, people need shelter. People need a sense that a place that they call their house, their home, right?
The Maslow hierarchy of needs, man.
That's correct. And so that
you don't have to have a Tesla, but you do have to have a roof.
You don't have to have a Tesla, but you got to have a roof. And I think that's part of it, if you will. And that dynamic that I'm so passionate about is that we often forget that in that buying journey, right? So that's where I think we have to get better to recognize that no matter if you want to streamline the process, which I think is important, you have to get away. We've had builders tell us they have 380 elevations, Devin. I mean, and if you go by region, certain regions have even more elevations and even more nuanced floor plan based on those elevations. You're thinking to yourself, you're creating too much choice for the buyer. They have to come on site. You're not making it easier for that individual or that family or that couple to make a smart buying decision.
I've had the privilege of working with really great salespeople through those years at Bright Door, and repeatedly the ones that were true professionals. There's salespeople that are selling, and then there's masters and professionals. And all the masters would say, a confused buyer never buys. And that's probably true at Lululemon, right? If all these pants or tops or shirts or socks are on sale, how do I just walk out of the store? I don't know where to begin. I know it is true with information overload and the web experiences that move people through a buying funnel probably succeed versus the ones that have way too much information and is too convoluted and the user just gets overwhelmed. And by the way, that's only going to get worse with technology, machine learning, the blockchain, AI. It's going to make infinite possibilities, infinite locations.
We just have to have the right people behind those keystrokes, right? I think if you were to look at the 13 or 14 largest home builders in America, I would argue that only 2 have a chief technology officer. So that would tell me
public companies.
Well, the publics, excuse me. Yeah. Maybe you could include a private in there. I would argue that, if you were to look at some of the other guys that are a little bit bigger that are private, they don't have a CTO.
Yeah.
And my argument in that is then who's making those innovation buying decisions, right? It can't be a CMO. Usually it is a CMO, but that's the other piece I want to share with you, Devin, is that too often I think there is a misnomer in that digital is the same as technology and innovation. The digital is the same as software. It just isn't, right? If you're a great digital marketer or you understand how to build a beautiful website and you want to integrate that website with maybe your CRM solution or maybe your digital marketing solution, sure, as a CMO, you are an expert in that. Not only do you know all things, marketing, brand, advertising, voice of customer, all the things that you care about in and around that storytelling, it doesn't mean you understand how technology architecture goes together. It doesn't mean that you understand if you buy one software solution and another software solution, will they connect and work together? Or will that technology provider charge you a massive amount of money to connect via API to allow those things to sort of come together. And I think that application programming interface, another acronym definition for you today as we have this sort of keyword search, is this dynamic of bringing it together. And I think that's what I worry about is that when I speak with our customers, and you just sort of gave an example around the Lululemon example, I mean, we have the same challenge. If I sat down with you, Devin, over a beer, either this conversation or in real life over a beer, and we were talking tech, I could use words and acronyms that we would know. We'd be speaking a language to each other.
Right.
If I did that with an aspiring customer of Cecilian Partners, I would lose them immediately. I would make them feel dumb. I would be coming across as someone that isn't listening to them. I would be using words that are not in their lexicon on a daily basis. So it's important that we understand our clients and present to them information in a way that makes sense for how they do their business. And that is really how we position ourselves in my firm, is that we make sure that we listen and that we don't talk too quickly in the sense of what tech is. Because, tech speak can get really kooky and we don't want to overwhelm people. You never want to do that. Messaging needs to be clear and concise.
I agree with you 100%. I wish I could, if I could think faster, there is a mathematical equation to what we're talking about. Innovation, technology, software, data. it's like one divided by another equals or maybe the other part of the equation is the transaction or happy customer satisfaction, and
I think it's the divide line. I think it's a quotient, actually. I think it's those things you just said over customer experience or the customer. Right? There's a human component to that I think if you were to whiteboard this together, right, we would say those three things left to right, and we would put it over the customer experience, because that's the nuance, right, is at the end of the day, if you're a production home builder or a community developer, your job is to sell lots to builders and get through those phases as a developer. As a production builder, your job is to get houses on the roofs on the ground, roofs up, people in, and move on. And there is a product-focused piece there. And that's why it's so likened to retail. Retail, at the end of the day, is about making sure at the retail level that you're managing your four-wall profit, that you're selling your product at a high margin, at a good turn, and you're not doing too many promotions to have margin erosion. Like, those are the same business metrics that are apples for apples in production building and retail. Truly, I almost wish they called it retail building, because it really is the same analog.
Well, and you're talking directly to the consumer, so it's the definition of B2C. And there is not a middle market. There's not resellers really for new homes. There's obviously in the resale home market, different world, and you probably in the general brokerage world, you probably have too many middlemen, but in new home construction, you have almost zero. And that's an interesting paradox, really. Hey, so for our listeners, walk us through what the XO does and how it works. And if I'm a real estate developer or builder, why would I consider you guys to help me solve all these challenges?
Sure. So first and foremost, Cecilian Partners is a software company. We work with land developers and production home builders all over the U.S. We actually have 7 software products in market today. To Devin's point exactly, our flagship product is the XO, which is a patented software product that marriages experiential data, the X, with operational data, the O. And it's effectively that ERP solution I referenced earlier. It is that effective single source of truth platform that brings together all things that matter in the curation and the ecosystem building of planned community development. Whether it's a master plan, when I say master plan, I'm thinking, at minimum 1,000 acres and 600 units. That's probably amenitized, to 5,000 acres and 25,000 units, et cetera, right? And sort of that kind of realm of possibility, again, highly amenitized. Maybe there's a golf course that's centric. Maybe, there is a pool that's centric, anything in that realm. What I'm getting at is what's so difficult today is this concept of what I call multi-tenant management, where if you're a developer, your job is to make sure, and in a variety of ways, your core job is to make sure, in my opinion, that as you're putting lots in the ground, and you're managing multiple builders, you are creating a sense of place that is a long-term opportunity, 7, 10, 20, 50 years in some cases, depending on where you are in your phase. The process of managing builders and the buyers in your community is highly cumbersome. There's a lot of data that flows in and out. There's a lot of things that happen, like, what does lot inventory management look like? How am I managing lot fees? How am I able to make sure that builder X is not building the same color home next to builder Y, right? All those things matter in that evolution. And so the XO streamlines all of that data, automates all that data, so the builder and developer can work together in tandem without having to rely on phone call, email, snail mail, or funny side conversations. What does that do? Well, that gives the aspiring home buyer a best-in-class journey. Right. It's true that in today's world, if you go to a master plan community, you as the aspiring home buyer want to build your dream home. And maybe you want it as an example, elevation A in dove gray. But if your neighbor also chose elevation A in dove gray, 100 times.
Elevation A in dove gray.
Yeah, that's right. Elevation A in dove gray. And at the same time, if your neighbor chose that already, well, geez, you might not hear for 3 or 4 weeks that you can't have that same home, because the anti-repetition rules in the community are so paramount to create a sense of uniqueness and feel in the plan.
To avoid the cookie cutter, mentality.
The track home mentality that existed in the 1950s and 60s, right?
Have you ever been to Levittown?
Sure.
I mean, you're kind of in the backyard, but like that was the first master plan community
no doubt.
After World War II, and it It started the phenomena of suburban sprawl. It had so many things going for it in terms of speed. I mean, they could build homes in weeks, but it developed this curse of, oh, that's a subdivision. That's, this. There's negativity around that, specifically from the architecture. So
Sure.
you're talking about restrictive covenants that say if we're going to build very similar floor plans, at least we can make the streetscape look interesting.
Absolutely. Well said. Yep, that's correct. So, again, thinking about that, what is in the sense of, lot orientation or lot fit is another way to look at it. How your 60s look versus your 50s look and how close they are to curb, that all matters, right? So to be able to have a digital way of being able to sort and understand that, I think is highly important. But there's another side of this that's really exciting, which is reporting. So by getting your data house in order first and being able to get all this information curated and into the XO, the client has the ability to have a beautiful dashboard that tells them from a land development perspective, how are my builders performing? Who's selling the most 60 foots? What's the average dollar per square foot? What's the best selling home price in my planned community? Conversely, if you're a home builder, because that's really the end user of the product, the home builder can also understand exactly how they're performing, what their dollar per square foot is, who their buyer is, what's the average price per home by the click of a button. And I think that is what's foundationally changed as we've worked with our customers, is being able to be in a position to give them real-time information, as close to real-time, Devin, as you can get. So 99.7% accurate, real-time, in a way that allows them to understand performance in the planned community. So that's the XO as a whole. Really remarkable product and exciting.
Everything you described just wasn't a possibility decades ago. Like builders were getting quarterly data, not real-time data. And it goes back to what you said at the beginning of the conversation, John. It is about data. Fred Smith is famous for saying Federal Express, FedEx is a data company. It's not a shipping company. And I think more and more people are realizing, it is about the data. I mean, we can come up with 100 examples that are really data information management companies, but they have a product that is the visible part of that. The thing that interests me, and this is where our worlds connect today, is you have this software platform, very robust, but isn't content a big part of how you use the software? Like, how do you deal with the content, which I think of as it's the bread that makes the sandwich here. If you don't have the ingredients, there's nothing to consume. So are builders as aware as they could be about compelling, authentic, motivating content to push through these platforms to generate the data? Is there a void there?
There is a void. I think where we offset that for builders is we take a position of making sure that every builder and builder user feels supported. So there is resistance, no question. But if they have a team of customer success folks that are committed to their ability to understand why this net new product is going to make them faster, smarter, better, then there's a co-investment there. They're willing to use the product and understand how to get the most out of it because we're willing to meet them in the middle and help them through every step and every journey. And I don't mean help them in the sense of like there's a bug or a quality assurance issue as much as how do I use this software? See, that's the problem. Many organizations will make large investments in like Salesforce or Property Base or HubSpot, and then they walk away. The problem is the platform is only as good as the usership, right? There's a level of discipline and training that has to go into being able to bring this stuff to life. And so where we offset that for our clients, builder and developers, we say, hey, our promise to you is not just cool software, but it's our team of people committed to making sure that everyone that logs into this product is up to date on how to get the most out of it. So it feels like a mutual investment. I do think that translates to better adoption curve because to your point on being a tech laggard is sort of the overall theme of this. I think that's the problem is it feels nervous, right? The lack of adoption has more to do with not understanding the why. What is the benefit of this product? Is it a cram down from the corporate office? Is it a cram down from ownership so that I have to use this product? We never want people to feel that way because it's my belief. I'm going to say something that's kind of questionable maybe, you might laugh, but software is always broken, Devin. You know this and I know this, right? At the end of the day, the best software companies know how to address the fires, the bugs, the quality assurance in the fastest way possible, right? I say to people, when you buy software, you're adopting a puppy. And if you adopt that puppy and put it in the crate and you don't feed that puppy, walk that puppy, give puppy water, puppy's going to die. So at the end of the day, we have to take that software and we have to take care of it and nurture it because it's going to grow and adapt as it gets more data. It starts to change, and it requires experts to maintain that for the life of engagement, right? I don't believe there's a software solution today, at the highest level that doesn't encounter bugs, quality assurance, and challenges. They have a team of people that keeps it alive and keeps it supported.
I'm going to use your puppy analogy, dude. That's very, very good. And you're right. Software is never finished because the world changes and engineers find ways to innovate, and hopefully it adds value. And like you would agree, the ultimate value is it good for the buyer? Is it good for the entity that's spending the money? If I'm spending money on something, why can't I have the best experience?
That's right, and that's table stakes. And I think that's what not to bring up negative things, but I think that was the tipping point. Was the whole COVID mantra, all the stuff that happened in March of 20 through Q4 of 21, that worry factor that was creating, and then all these folks that were moving from major metropolitan environments, creating a surge of focus on primary markets. Examples of that are Austin, Texas, now what's happened, and Dallas-Fort Worth's growth and Houston's growth. Look at secondary markets like Tucson, or Nashville now, and the growth that's happened in Nashville, Sarasota, Florida. I mean, the city growth potential, if you look at end of year 2018 and end of year 2022, I don't have the exact statistics, but I've seen the histograms, is remarkable, right? It's just growth across all of those major kind of markets that had pretty steady growth, had a remarkable incline in those key cities. And ideally, it's in the states we talk about all the time: Florida, Texas, Arizona, Utah, California. Those big five is where the influx of growth has really happened. And those secondary and primary markets in those states is where we see that. This is
inevitably leading to the topic of artificial intelligence. How is and by the way, let's don't get hung up on just Chat GPT phenomena for the last 6 months. It's machine learning, generative AI, and all of its permutations is changing everything. It's going to change the way the consumer buys. We're so close to the point where every consumer buyer is just going to rely on their personal AI to make decisions on their behalf. And it's going to begin with all those machine learning algorithms scanning everything online and then just reporting back the elements that matter to the user, in this case, the home buyer. You're literally going to say, hey, blank GPT, create a list of the top 10 neighborhoods in this geographic audience region with this price point, with a swimming pool, with tennis courts, with active community, amenities, et cetera, and your personal assistant, and already, Bard does a great job of this, and the Anthropic product, Claude, does this. It synthesizes everything that's online, every website, every blog, every YouTube video, and says, based on your criteria, here is your result. So the early adopters and then the entire mainstream, in a really accelerated way, is just going to start communicating with their favorite AI, and they're not going to be looking at 20 websites. They're not going to be. They're going to let the AI do the work. How does that change things? Like, how does that change the way the builder developer operates when there's a new third party injected between the buyer and the seller, and it's the buyer's machine learning coach? How is that going to evolve?
I'm hoping, and this is sort of a kind of a funny non-answer for you, but I'm hoping that other industries can start to be earlier adopters on testing that out, so we can kind of create lookalike rhythms for us in home building and land development. I will say I am leery. I do know that this is moving at the speed of light, and I do know the level of adoption curve seems higher, especially on the language model piece, which makes a lot of sense. Although I do know there's some fact basis check opportunity to look at, but no doubt in its entirety, it's great. I will say, if you remember, AI Watson was everything, right? I mean, IBM spent a lot of money in AI
Jeopardy,
Watson.
Right? It wouldn't beat Jeopardy.
Yeah. That's right. It was that. It was. They were everywhere, front and center, and then it just sort of disappeared. And so I do think I get nervous on some of the trend tech stuff. But this is different. And I agree with you, Devin, in that what's happening with ChatGPT and understanding sort of how to query things in a different way. I mean, this is like, go back to like 2005 with like Ask Jeeves. Do you remember Ask Jeeves, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so like this is a hilarious sort of like next universe of what Ask Jeeves could be. And so I think, like anything else, we are, especially in the US, obsessed with information overload, getting answers quickly. And I think that's what will be interesting, is will allow us to make decisions faster and more informed. I hope so. But I hope that there's a mantra of accuracy on those decisions, right? If that makes sense. But I think other industries will be leaders, and then we'll be behind them, because we've got work to do, Devin, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, again, that's where I'm guilty of being too impatient at seeing a possible future that could be here today, but it's kind of like turning a battleship, and in every industry, it's like turning a battleship. But I think this is different. I said that about the blockchain 3 years ago. That was different. But this is different because, just even OpenAI's version, the fastest adoption of any product in all of human history. So it's the speed of change is going to make this actually evolve into people's lives quicker than anybody can imagine. Even Silicon Valley, they don't truly understand how quick it's going to evolve. And some people are afraid of it. And your point about the accuracy of data, that's critical too. If your personal AI is doing all web searches for you, then all of those communities have got to make sure their data is visible and is accurate. And same thing with elevations, floor plans, all that. Reading into deeper levels of software, not just cursory text and graphics. As we wrap up, I want to ask you a couple of questions around being a CEO, an entrepreneur, and maybe we'll finish with some advice you could share with budding entrepreneurs. But I learned this through another mutual friend that you and I know about, who's also an employee at Cecilian Partners, that you and your team at Cecilian developed something called a mental health day. Tell me about that. What is that, and why'd you do that?
Sure. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. So we do something for Mental Health Week, actually.
Okay, dude.
So at the end of every year,
5 times more powerful.
Yeah. So at the end of every year, we have a random employee stand up and pick a series of dates out of a hat, quite literally, like on little fortune cookies. And those dates will be the week that we observe. And what it is, it's an opportunity for our employees to take off, because as you know, sometimes people don't like to take vacation. They don't have planned vacation. It's our way to give back, to say, hey, the company is going to be closed, if you will. You can do whatever you want over these 5 days, but do you. Spend time on yourself. Enjoy yourself. Find time of quiet. Find it, whatever makes you happy. We want you to enjoy. If you want to do a little bit of work and a little bit of play, whatever you want. And it's going to change from Mental Health Week to Mental Wellness Week, so it's more intentional. And it's something we're going to promise to every employee indefinitely, year over year. Mm-hmm.
How many times have you done it, and how is it working?
So we've been in business for 4 years. We've done it 3 out of 4 years. It is working beautifully. I think it is something that our employees take in a nice way. They don't take it for granted. I think they understand it's an investment in every single person that works for the company. I think that it matters. I think in today's noisy world, it's important to stop and acknowledge the individual contributor in every single way and allow them to have a reset week. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, dude, I think it's noble, admirable. A lot of startup companies wouldn't dare think of that, John, because it impacts revenue or productivity. But you have a different approach, so credit to you. I think that's every company could learn that, and invariably, great employees don't take advantage of it. They improve themselves, so when they re-engage, they're actually smarter and more focused and more motivated.
I completely agree with that. I think there's a balance. I think now more than ever, that balance point has to be there, if you will, right? So, just because you're not logged into your device doesn't mean that you're not adding value to the company, right? To your point, if they're bettering themselves, by default, they're bettering the company and their position that they hold.
So if I wanted to start a software company today, what advice would you have for me?
It's a hard question. I think if you wanted to start a software company today, you'd have to have a very clear vision. You'd have to have a clearly articulated total addressable market, and you'd have to have a product that makes sense. And I think the product has to be purpose-built for the problem. I think too often great product CEOs, great tech entrepreneurs get caught up in the architecture and product of building out that technology.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it might not work for an end user. So what I think about every day and why I have such a wonderful team around me is I have this vision that I think about, and I focus endlessly on the product and how the product's going to be used and how it's going to come together. And it's sort of like a series of things that I understand, but I have a CTO and others that can kind of bring that together. And I think for that reason is what I think about all the time in and around the product and the usership is what I would say.
Yeah. Are there things you would have done different in the past 4 years? I mean, it's got to be something. What could have?
Sure. I mean, I would, full candor, I would have raised more money in the beginning. Bootstrapping a business from the ground up. We started this company in the basement of my house 4 years ago. It was just me and two other guys. And, I look back, I wouldn't do it differently, but I do think being in a position to have raised more capital in the beginning allows you to be more planful in product allocation or sales strategy or marketing strategy, if you will, right? The converse to that, though, is you protect your equity, right? As you go into larger raises of capital, working with large institutions, you're in a different position as an early stage founder, owning more of your firm than you would if you would have diluted that early on. So, but I think, starting with more could be better.
It gives you more runway and more more options, and but ultimately you lose control. And I don't know that there is a perfect startup anymore, but I do believe that the world of venture funding and investing in that model is evolving.
Dramatically.
I mean, like it's not just the Kickstarter type campaigns or in crowdsourcing things, but there's so many new opportunities. And I mean, we are literally in a creative economy. If you have a microphone, a camera, you can have a podcast or a channel. If you're hitting all the right buttons, you could be making $100,000 a month. I mean, so it's phenomenal at how opportunities have presented themselves because of this technology, all these technologies, and yet there's going to be in the AI example, there's going to be a lot of people who lose their job because they're doing something that's so repetitive. A machine can do it better. So it's navigating a career, especially for millennials, is going to be really interesting. I employ everybody to think like a computer engineer first and foremost, and figure out, is there something I'm passionate about there? Because that might be the only skill set that matters. Everything else, at some point, robots are going to do. I mean, there's already robots hanging sheetrock in Japan. Robot gypsum.
I've seen that. Yes,
and you and I saw a great presentation about 3D printed houses. So if a machine can print a house in 3 days, and that means that framing carpenters aren't needed, like where does that end? And
right.
Yeah, it's just if nothing else, just start thinking about it because this is uncharted territory.
I agree. Thank you, Devin.
Hey, any parting thoughts? Anything we didn't touch on? Anything you want to?
No, I mean, I think I wanted to say thank you for having me. I think this was a great discussion. I think we could talk about our industry and residential real estate all day long. We could talk about software and technology building all day long. So it feels great to talk to you. I'm grateful that we met. You've been a big part of our story at Cecilian Partners in ways, either not related or directly related. So that's been a gift. So I wanted to say thank you, and I appreciate you making time to allow me to tell my story and talk shop with you today.
Dude, it's my pleasure, John. I've admired the fact that you've taken a business that I knew intimately well, and you've done you've done more things with it than we did, and is no judgment on our team. We were too early, and you've come along at the peak where it's needed, and you're being very thoughtful about how to embrace this intersection between tools, technology, and people and process. And I think that's the only way software works, is if people really, really are committed to it, and if they're seeing value. You can't tell somebody, enter all your stuff into Salesforce, it's your job, and it's a drudgery and they hate it. But if they're getting some reward for that, if it's helping them have maybe they earn more commission, maybe they actually have a happy homeowner, then that's the smart way to go about it. And I guess that'll be the norm. It'll be the norm going forward.
I think so. We'll get there. Well, takes time.
I'm gonna steal your puppy analogy, dude. That's gonna be.
Please do. Feel free. Not a problem, Devin. Thank you.
All right, John. Thank you for your time. We'll
Thank
follow
you.
up and have another revisit in months ahead. And hey, for any of our listeners that want to reach out to you, what's the best way to connect with you or the website or the company?
Check us out. Check me out on LinkedIn. I'm always available on there a bunch. And then CecilianPartners.com if you want to learn more about my team and our products.
That's great, John. Thanks, buddy. Have a good afternoon.
Take care. Bye,
See you,
Devin.
bye.